Next curve.
Hey guys, this is Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst at Next Curve, and I'm here at Philz Cafe. It's a cafe or a coffee shop here in San Diego, and I'm here with a good friend of mine. He is Mr. 5G. And why don't you go introduce yourself, Mr. 5G?
All right, so I'm John Smee, Senior Vice President of Engineering and head up the wireless research at Qualcomm.
Yeah, and see, I told you, Mr. 5G. So, hey, how come you don't call me, man?
I know, exactly.
I mean, it's been like a year. What's wrong with you?
I guess I was just running into you frequently enough. I didn't feel the need to pick up the phone and call.
That's true. That's true. But, the reason why I wanted to talk to you is because, recently I posted on LinkedIn that we need a 5G reset, or the reset in the conversation. Actually, apparently it resonated with a lot of people. They thought, hey, not a bad idea. And didn't get too many like naysayers on there. Actually, a lot of folks would say, yeah, I think this could be a good time, especially given that, I think we've settled into like sort of this trough of disillusionment, but I think we've overshot, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's now a danger of missed opportunities with 5G. And I definitely think, based on how I've seen the conversation go over the last year since we last talked about 5G at 5G Summit, that this is a really good time, because I think it would really be sad if the ecosystem, that is 5G, the carriers, the technology companies, the entire huge ecosystem missed out on the big picture of what 5G is. And so I wanted to talk to you about that. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And get your thoughts on, well, what would, how should we reset the conversation? And what are some of the things that you think are important in making sure that everyone out there that hears 5G understands how they should think about the technology and how it can have the impact that everyone hopes that it would have?
Yeah, when we look at 5G, I think it's important to recognize that we look at this, 2020 to 2030 technology.
Yeah.
And when we spoke about a year ago, it was on that perception of expansion and innovation and kind of what comes next. And it is that reality, right? The 5G deployments happened early. We look at 2019, we look at 2020. The products got out there very quickly. Yeah. And if we look at the entire ecosystem that came out of the work from home environment, that kind of acceleration of tech purchase, you did have that reality that there was a fast deployment. The 4G, 5G transition happened quickly to get that baseline initial 5G deployments going. And as we're looking right now, and even what lies ahead, there's that continued investment in getting more and more 5G out there. So whether that's on we look at coverage, we look at capacity, we look at the network deployment continuing, to this day, adding that 5G capacity. And I think what's important to recognize is then the reaction between, you have the technology, you have the standard, you have the innovation, you have the deployment, you have the initial devices, and then you have this additional wave of incoming devices, evolving use cases. Right. And so I think that's where we're at now, that we have now, as an example, with release 17, RedCap, the NR Lite, where we're taking 5G into that lower cost, lower power IoT. We have the reality of super capable, 10 gigabit per second type smartphone chips with the, Qualcomm's modem RF roadmap, X75 as an example, this really powerful chip that's out there, and what it can do not only for smartphones, but also expanding 5G into some of these other applications. I think what's important to understand is as other industries are now adopting the technology, it does take a longer time to have that integrated into their operational side. So there's already been kind of a societal and industrial kind of back to work, back to supply chain management, back to inventories, back to the overall kind of economic, industrial, consumer ecosystems kind of reevaluating, coming back into the post-COVID era globally. And so when you put that context into the fact that, hey, we are now more than halfway through release 18 as an example, just as the marker of standardization where releases 15, 16, 17, that initial first half of 5G. We're now into 18, 19, 20. Tons of discussions going on around what's going to be in release 19, setting that stage for 19 and 20. At the same time, their longer term research is heating up on 6G 2030, but it's only 2023. And so when we look now at what lies ahead in the next 3 years, then all of a sudden we have now new types of opportunities. Take connected laptops. Here we're sitting in a coffee shop. You could have your device. It could be connected on Wi-Fi. You could have, gone 3 or 4 different Wi-Fi hotspots. Exactly. So I have a 5G laptop. It's a great example where I'm starting to use it in ways I didn't expect. Where that native 5G experience is just there. You open the device, you have that incredible battery life with the Windows on Snapdragon, but you also have the fact that it's connected. I forgot to hook up the hotspot, and it's actually already connected. It's got native 5G. And you look at what is even the subscription models that are evolving. So the operator community is absolutely focused on how can they bring more value to their subscribers. How can they have multi-device, whether it's laptop, tablet, obviously smartphone. Longer term, we're starting to see, again, that interest in, hey, is augmented virtual reality only an indoor scenario? Is that also going to move outside? So when I look at what's in the technology of 5G, what's in the standardization that's already in the spec or that's getting worked on by our teams right now, there's a big roadmap ahead. And so we're in that period now of people threading together some of these new business models. When you're taking a technology like 5G and you're bringing it together with compute, like think, what do you do on your cell phone now? What did you do on your cell phone 3 years ago? When are you taking a Teams call on your phone? When are you saying, hey, there's stuff I didn't used to do, and it's enabled by that 5G capacity. But some of that is a consumer change. And so it needs to be absorbed into the way people use their devices, the way companies want their workforce is to leverage the technology for productivity. That's a very, long-term innovation story where it doesn't happen overnight because people are kind of adapting their ways of work all the time. But it's something that's now, it's in the tool chain. It's able to be accessed. And so in my view, we're in that phase now. The business models are also adapting about how the technology gets incorporated into some of these other use cases.
And I think, the key word, and you just brought it up, over a year ago at 5G Summit was evolution. And I think that's one of the things that has kind of been missing in how people really perceived and set their expectations for 5G. They thought, we're going to have, a gig up and down day one everywhere and anywhere, right? But one of the things that I think folks really need to understand across the board, I mean, not just the consumers, because I think it's the consumers that may have not felt as much of the benefit and impact of 5G as customers. As we start to see 5G make its way into the industry as well, that everyone understands, look, this is an evolution, right? And that it's fundamentally vital, actually, that you understand the technology and how it will evolve. And like we were saying, we're in the middle of the releases for 5G. We're looking at 5G Advanced coming, and 6G thereafter. Are you in tune with that? And do you understand how mobile computing is changing, mobile wireless computing is changing going forward? Because I really think that's what is the missing understanding, is that we're really talking about mobile wireless computing. This whole idea of you guys say it all the time, connected intelligent edge, right? I mean, you guys are really evolving that. I mean, if you look at all the technology that's in your portfolio, your R&D, you guys are pushing the envelope of that on the client side, the infrastructure side now, right? As well as everything in the middle, that air interface. And that's starting to become very diverse, right? Especially with 5G. And by the way, stop me if you disagree with anything, because I want to get in a fight with you, like an argument, because you're too damn agreeable. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
You know,
when you say something I don't agree with, I'll speak up. But I think
okay,
it
I
is
have to
that.
find something that you disagree with. But yeah, and I think really that's what's missing. Anyways, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I think I'm glad you brought up compute explicitly, right? Because we
Yeah.
look at, say, generative AI and these
Yeah.
large language models, and what is the game changer in terms of how does that get applied in different scenarios, right? So there's
Yeah.
a huge, many industries are adapting to the reality of you have technology that's continuing to evolve, and as well, there's a big step that's realized simultaneously in a group. And so that's what's happened with large language models, this
Yeah.
realization that the way we were doing natural language processing, the way neural networks were being designed and implemented, hey, there's huge new capabilities that are now possible.
Yeah.
And so that reality of what's possible with compute and where that compute resides, I think one of the hallmarks of our era, it's 2023 now, if we look at technology and whether it's decades of the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s, later on the 2030s. So here we are, in the middle of the first half of the 2020s, and cloud computing's been around for over 10 years. That's not a new story. And obviously device client computing has been around for a long time as well.
Right.
We used to talk of mainframes and client devices. But today, I think what's different is you're having this value proposition for AI and what it can do for human productivity. And whether that's a worker, a teacher, a hospital worker, all of that technology possibility, and you start saying, okay, where is that implemented?
Yeah.
And you can access a website from a device, sure. So that's a device to cloud connectivity thing.
Yeah.
So any device that's not connected, immediately says, well, what's the value of that device if I'm not having that access to a network? Because the device is engaging with real-time external information.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the capabilities of the device, whether it's for privacy, whether it's security, whether it's because of latency and speed. So we're really focused on hybrid AI, where AI is occurring. Sure, absolutely, there's a bunch of stuff happening in the cloud. There's also tons of stuff happening on device.
Right.
And I think when technology takes a big step forward, and when the adoption takes a big step forward, it's usually because both, and not only a big step in one domain, but a capability in an adjacent domain. Right? So similar to the fact that we had multi-core processing and all of this sort of arraying of technologies that enabled cloud compute, well, we now have this complement of hybrid on-device AI. But that's happening in an era where cellular connectivity, the data rates that are achievable, even Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 7, the capabilities of wireless now are much more substantial than they were 10 years ago. The capability of compute on the device side is much more capable than it was 10 years ago. You could say, okay, is cloud computing more powerful than it was 10 years ago? Well, already 10 years ago, it was huge. But the device side improvement, and what does that mean for your cell phone, for your laptop, for your tablet, for your headset? But you're combining that now in an era where there's new models emerging for what does it mean for an enterprise application. So
and I think you bring up a lot of great points, and I think the whole edge AI or hybrid AI and hybrid computing trends or hybrid cloud computing trends are things that are really starting to dominate everyone's thinking these days, whether they know it or not, right? Because I think we're still, for the most part, stuck in the traditional cloud mindset, but it is shifting. And I think the important thing is, if we look at 5G and we look beyond just the connectivity part of it and look broader at architecturally, how is it changing things as we look at distributed systems, right? Whether it's from cloud to device. That's what's really important. And, understanding what the 5G roadmap is, how it's influencing and changing the economics of where you place things across this continuum from cloud to endpoint, that's what people should be aware of, and where a lot of the innovation, I think, is going to happen, right? So whether it's new capabilities, new computing models that enable new types of applications, that's kind of like the angle and part of like this reset that I've been talking about in my research, as well as just my opinings on social media. But I think that's fundamentally the expanded thinking that needs to happen as you start to reset 5G, because if you're only focusing just solely on the connectivity and not looking at compute, the economics of compute, the cost performance trade-offs of where you place things, then you're missing out on the point and the opportunities is the way I look at it. And the other thing that we talked about at 5G Summit was this whole notion of fusion, right? Mm-hmm. That 5G has a lot of new features that actually traditional operators and folks just aren't used to, right? We're used to traditional, with even 4G, a lot of it is traditional telco models, right, and applications. But with 5G, it's that whole portfolio of features is expanding outside of what these traditional feature sets, right? Yep. And I brought up fusion last time, and you said no. So let's see if we're going to be arguing. Maybe we need to have wine next time instead of coffee.
Well, I think you bring up a couple,
but so let's argue about that, because you disagree with me. And if you didn't watch that episode, you need to. Go to the Next Curve YouTube channel and look it up, okay? Or we'll add a link so that you can get to it really quick and watch us disagree, which is fabulous, actually.
But I'll say a couple of points here. I think one is that what becomes powerful is when platforms are present and evolving at different rates, and all of a sudden you have the compute platform and the connectivity platform happening at the same time. And then you bring up the fact that wireless is innovating in areas beyond, powerful mobile broadband. That is, we're bringing in, think of location and positioning and sensing technologies. So those sort of technologies, all of a sudden, whether it's augmented reality and you're outdoor, or you think of a smart city, you think of connected vehicles, you think of electrification, you think of all of these different grids and the way people and industries are interacting with those grids. And you start saying, wow, there's going to be a lot of new models for hybrid, and whether it's hybrid compute or even communications and compute trade-off.
But so I can appreciate that, but that's looking at, let's say, a particular functional, what is the architecture to support a certain type of distributed computing, architecture, right? What I was talking about with fusion is that you have something like the connected car, and that something like 5G provides a number of different modes and functions to support that. So CVDX is not the same as broadband, right? Is not the same as any kind of ultra low latency type of feature that you might be incorporated into that system of connected car or autonomous, or whatever you want to call it, remote control car, drones maybe even. You have all these new features, and then the sensory stuff. Because I was in New York, one of the things I was really surprised about is that how great the service was. I mean, before when I was in Town Square, you got nothing, right? Forget about uplink, downlink, just zero, right? It's horrible. And one of the things that I appreciated 5G for that, because it was 5G service that I was getting. But one of the things that I thought was really lacking was still the GPS really sucked. Right? And how it dawned on me that, hey, if we had some of those precision location features, maybe these location services could be enhanced and better, right? Because they're very poor in dense urban areas with skyscrapers like New York. But having this combination of features that then enable an even more compelling application, I think is what I meant by the fusion, right? But I totally get where you're coming from in terms of the hybrid AI, hybrid cloud computing, or whatever you want to call it, distributed computing.
But on the positioning and sensing, there's one way to look at it, is that the 5G signals, they're wider band. They're more directive. Their ability to have lower latency interaction between the network and the device. All those things point to being able to have better, more accurate, more instantaneous positioning. But that's an example where how industries adopt positioning takes a very, very long time, right? So whether you're looking at car services where, hey, you're hailing a car with an app, Or you look at and how long GPS was around before people were like, oh, that's going to be an interesting new way to order your taxi versus a telephone call. You have the technology that's there, but then you need some fresh thinking about how it's going to get used.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's where a good example, like the Qualcomm Aware platform for IoT and logistics, right? It's about this ability to have things like positioning and what's in the cloud, what's harvested in terms of being able to have intelligent data processing, and then what's leveraging the fact that you have all of these connected devices, connected nodes, and whether it's, tiny antennas on a package, whether it's cell phones, whether it's things on crates. So you have this different types of technologies emerging at the edge of the network, but then the value of those being connected and the technologies that get integrated into that takes a while for those new businesses to say, this is going to be an improvement in which KPI? Is it going to improve my ship time? Is it going to improve my competitive pricing? Is it going to enable me to have more efficient drive routes? Is it going to be about family safety and understanding of where your children are at some point in time because, hey, you have this more accurate positioning and it's done in a low-key way, privacy's incorporated into every aspect of that? Or is it some interesting augmented virtual reality 3D metaverse play? But all of that's going to leverage the sort of technologies that are part of that positioning and sensing and processing.
But my point is this: is that with the fusion concept that I or thing that you kind of dismissed. I can't believe you dismissed my idea. It is the holistic thinking that's needed, but also understanding the roadmap, plus understanding the technology portfolio, feature portfolio, and how it's evolving, and that it's not all here today, right? There's a commercialization that has to happen, and then, like you were saying, deployments. But even before then, especially with the enterprise and industrial, there's this whole socialization process that has to happen.
And it goes through like strategic operational planning, multi-year investment decisions. And I think that's the point that we used to say at the very beginning of 5G that, hey, and even when we're explaining, hey, what's 5G instead of 4G? The point is 5G is not like a instantaneous point in time. And okay, 5G happened and then we're done. And even that story of that 5G, I have children who are in high school, and you can talk about potential energy and kinetic energy. And so you have this potential energy because the mass is at a certain height with the gravitational pull. But then as that ball is moving, you're converting that to kinetic energy. And I think the way to understand 5G is the industry came together, a global NRE investment that was aligned, spectrum bands were chosen, RFICs were developed, baseband circuits were developed, infrastructure was developed, the latest cloud technologies are incorporated. You brought that together, that's potential energy. And then you had the initial deployments. So you can have 10 base stations up, you can have 100, you can have 100,000, you can have 1 million. But the base stations get deployed, the devices get launched, the chipsets are in full production. Now that doesn't mean then all of a sudden 5G's everywhere and all the use cases are monetized and the value flow of investment and risk taking is fully worked out. But we have that foundation, and that's where the technology continues advancing, even as that kinetic energy is being realized. And so coming out of the COVID, return to work, the macroeconomic environment we're currently here in July 2023. Well, that's that point that what are the investments in the next 2 years, in the next 1 year, as these different types of devices, different types of use cases work through that. And so in my view, there's still a lot to come on that 5G because it is about bringing together this business model, the technical capabilities, the low cost, low power, and then even the game changers of AI. When you look at why you're buying your next device,
we didn't get to talk about that much.
But could be another discussion. But
that might be
that next wave of devices. What's it, because it has 5G, because it has a new camera, because it has on-device AI, because all of a sudden what you're doing with the device is a game changer, and you have this aha moment that wow, this is pretty cool. Like I've had with my 5G PC, where I'm like, wow, I wouldn't want my kid going off to university without a 5G connected PC, because I don't want their ability to upload their homework assignment based on whether their roommate, did or did not pay the cable bill.
Yeah.
We want them to be a free agent in terms of connectivity, because that's baked into the assumption of how they learn and absorb information. So there's a lot of examples where it just takes a while for the technical availability to work its way through.
John,
Good to see you as always.
To chat with you. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in. If you want to know everything about 5G, he's the man to follow. And if you want to know everything about everything else, I'm the man to follow. So remember to follow Next Curve at www.next-curve.com. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.